Today on the Gridiron, we're going to be talking everything football. We got rule changes coming in full swing. Some are good, some are bad, some are outrageous. After just signing Daniel Jones to like a $40 million-ish a year contract, as well as plenty more today on the Gridiron. Welcome into the Gridiron. Obviously, before we get into all of that great NFL football action we're going to be talking about today, I want to give a big shout out to one of our sponsors, and that is Dubby. If you like an energy supplement that doesn't give you any jitters and ultimate focus, you need to go to dubby.gg right now and use our code to get 10% off your first order. That is The House Call, all caps, no spaces, The House Call. It'll be in the description of this video to get yourself 10% off. And right now at Dubby, if you order one of their energy supplements, you can add a hydration supplement, 30-serving hydration supplement to your order and get it free with their code. It is online. You can see that code. Buy one, get one hydration supplement as well. They do have hydration supplements, no caffeine, pure hydration. If you're an athlete like me, I play soccer in an adult league here in Alabama. That it gets hot. I get sweaty. I need a hydration supplement that keeps me in the game, and Dubby has that for me, as well as the mental focus caffeine that I need for my day-to-day work, as well as being focused on this podcast, man. So go to w.gg, use our link, which will be in the description, or our code, which will be in the description, get 10% off your order at w.gg. Now, it has been a wild, wild day. People have been freaking out about how the NFL is going through drastic changes. They might as well change it to the Flag Football League, not the National Football League. Some are saying it is literally insane. But what exactly did they ban? It is interesting to note that the hip drop tackle itself is not banned. You can still hip drop tackle. What they are banning is what is called the swivel hip drop tackle. Now, that seems like a convoluted way to explain this rule, but let me give you a little more context. Now, what is being banned is not the double wrap up from a trailing position of the arms and dragging someone to the ground. It is the double wrap up of the arms around someone's waist and swiveling your hips into a seated motion, which often leads to lower body injuries because you land on people's feet, ankles, and calves as you're being taken to the ground. That is what is being banned. Now, there's a lot of people that are like, oh, they're banning tackling. No, they're banning a style of tackling that is very, very rare. I think they said throughout their entire season, they only saw 250 tackles that were like that. And let's be fair here, there are linebackers who get almost that number in a season on their own. All right. So this is not something that is like prevalent. It's not a huge deal. There are only minor instances of where this is happening. Now, they also stated, the NFL came out and said, where as this would be a 15-yard penalty if flagged, they do not and have not informed refs according to what they believe would be a flaggable offense. What they have stated is that they would rather see this similarly to the use of helmet in tackles, where the crown of the helmet is used, an impact from running backs and linebackers, where it is a warning letter or a fine after the game through their ruling review of the game. From that perspective, I don't think this is going to be as big of a deal as it might have been when you first heard the news, because they have gone further and explained it to what they believe it should be, how it should be enforced, and how it will be enforced. Now, there is a caveat to that, and I had said it before we started this recording. It is very hard to draw a line in the sand and operate off that line through blurred glasses, right? Like, there are many tackles in the NFL that are borderline swivel tackles, and it's where you draw that line. Any rule that is left up to interpretation on what is and what isn't, and they do try to spell it out. I will give the NFL credit. They try to spell it out, but we have seen them try to spell things out previously, and it has not worked. This is going to be one of those things where we're going to have to watch to see how many flags are actually thrown. How many times do we actually see this happen? And how often does the NFL refs get it wrong? Because just remember, all right, the NFL is one of the few leagues, national professional sports leagues in the world, that does not consistently employ their referees. When the season is over, they go off and do another job. They are not consistently working on their craft. They are not held to a standard. you will notice that they figure out who's going to be playoff refs and who's going to referee the Super Bowl based on season performance. And so, Chris, I'm going to start with you on this one. How do you see this rule playing out? Hey, it's your first episode. We're breaking the cherry, all right?
Shoot straight for the neck. All right.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. This is your first one. This is your first one. We have to start you off right on the biggest news of the day. So, Chris, how do you see this rule playing out? And is it going to be as big of a deal as some of these people are making out? I mean, J.J. Watt came out and said it should be flags on a belt already. So, I mean, do you think that's what it should be? Or is this kind of get blown out of proportion based on the definition I gave you?
Man. So I think you kind of already alluded to essentially what my main point really would have been is I don't think it's going to be as big a deal as everybody tends to think it's going to be. So just by doing some research, like you said, last season, they saw about 235 tackles with this specific format. But I think the reason, I think they said average about one time per game, which really isn't much if you think about it. Through the course of a game, it's a 3-hour game. You see his tackle one time. On top of that, I think what is causing the concern and maybe why they moved to make this type of rule is because they saw a 65% increase from last year, from 2022. So I think that might be the cause. If they're seeing that it's becoming more common, then you're going to want to nip the trend in the butt and say, okay, we're not having it anymore. So I don't think it's going to be a huge deal. I think it's more of putting people on notice. And I think also there is something to consider when you're looking at the NFL as a whole. You have to consider the NFL at the bottom line is a business, right? So in order for your business to function, you need your top employees to be on the field. That's bottom line, because it impacts fans, it impacts ticket sales, it impacts gambling, it impacts fantasy football, it impacts so many more things. So you want your star players on the field, and when your star players aren't on the field, there is a direct business impact to that. So I personally don't have a problem with a company coming out and saying, hey, we're trying to find ways. Not everything's going to be perfect, right? But you're coming out and you're trying to find ways to basically make your employees, the longevity of their career, be successful. You want to keep them on the field as much as possible. No, not all the rules as fans are we going to like or are we going to agree with, but I feel like that's business, period. Nobody's job do you like everything that comes out. But at the end of the day, the whole point of it is you have to learn to adjust to that. I think when it first came out, we did have the preface to kind of lean towards it being negative because there was really no type of details about it. It was just simply like, hey, this is what we're banning. And there was no big thing. I think a lot of the players that were coming out and making comments, their biggest issue was that, hey, I love how you tell us what not to do, but you don't give us a way to do it correctly. You don't give us a correction. And me coming as a quality analyst and like a day job, I get that type of feedback all the time. Like, you tell me what I did wrong, but you're not giving me a follow-up as far as like, how do I fix that? And I think that was the biggest thing. But now that more details have kind of emerged and they've kind of pointed out like really what the essence of it is. I've even had I've read some comments where people are basically like, hey, it's basically they're banning lazy tackling is what it seems like. So instead of like actually trying to tackle, you don't want somebody just diving, just dead weight and just dragging you down. And essentially that's what's calling injuries. So no, I don't think it's going to be as huge a deal as people are thinking it's going to be. Obviously, like my big preface to most things is we'll just have to wait and see kind of how it plays out. I think with any rule that they implement, but I don't have a problem with them constantly trying to find ways to keep their employees on the field, because bottom line, that's what it is. That's what keeps us watching. You want to see star players. You want to see Devontae Adams on the field. You want to see Ramondre Stevenson on the field. You want to see Saquon Barkley on the field. In order to do that, they have to find ways to keep them healthy, and I think this is basically what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and you hit a nail on the head, and you think about the injuries that there weren't a plethora of them. However, the ones that there were season ending almost. I mean, we didn't see Mark Andrews for pretty much the entire regular season. We didn't see him to the playoffs, realistically. You know, you think about Tony Pollard, he was done. This has been one of the things where, and it looks bad. Every time you see it, you see these guys go down and their ankles are getting rolled up on, their knees are getting twisted. And it really is a style of a takedown that is more of a wrestling move. And if you think about how like a tackling move is, it is based off of, you know, what's the easiest way to get someone to the ground. And it turns out flinging your hips with, you know, motion and lower center of gravity and hanging on someone's center of gravity is going to take them down. And if they can't move their feet, yeah, you're going to fall. So it is a bit of a lazy tackle. It is a way for you to kind of, just kind of sit down. Like that's what they do. They grab and they sit down.
Yeah, pretty much.
It'd be like, if you're sitting, and that's what it is. If you look at the tackle, what they're actually banning, it's not that big of a deal. Now a lot of people are like, oh, how are you going to tackle, King Henry? How are you going to tackle some of these bigger guys? I don't know. Figure it out.
Yeah.
Like you can, like, there is something I learned, all right? Like, okay, we're going to talk about something I don't like to talk about. We're going to talk about my military experience. And in my military experience, you get told not to do shit all the time. And you know what your job is? To figure out how to do your job without doing those things. So instead of sitting there and complaining and being like, oh, poor me, woe is me, figure out how to do it and do it right without getting flagged, without getting fined, and without having to have a conversation at the end of the game of what you think of the rule and how it cost you the game.
Right. You get paid millions of dollars to figure it out.
Yeah. Your job, you're playing a child's game, you get paid millions of dollars, figure it out. Okay. Yeah. If you, and like, that's the thing, like, oh, I can't hit them in the knees anymore. I can't hit them up high. I can't throw my body on their legs as they're running away from me and holding onto their waist and break their ankle and tear their ligaments. How am I supposed to tackle them? I don't know. The standard head on, slide your helmet to the side, hit them in the center of gravity and wrap up like you're taught in high school. I mean, literally fucking pee-wee football. I was taught how to tackle. It is a standard. Biggest man does not always win. All right. Proven fact. Look at the size of some of these fucking offensive tackles and look at the defensive ends that make them look foolish on bull rushes and speed rushes and everything else. Do you hear those guys complaining? Huh? Do you hear the edge rushers who have to fight these 350, 360 pound tackles complaining that, oh, they're bigger than me. How am I supposed to do the job? They're holding me every play. I mean, they do complain about the holds, but you get what I'm saying. But just, I'm going to go to you on this one, man. Like you clearly have a feeling that seems to differ from ours. And I don't know if the definition I gave you changed that feeling at all, but it is becoming, a little soft out there. You think about how the Tom Brady rule that quarterbacks below the knee really changed everything. And what we've seen in the last 20 years or so of football has really changed the game of football, probably more since like they started wearing helmets and face guards and stuff like that instead of the leather caps. I mean, this is some of the biggest changes we've seen to a national sport, in ages, and it's happening so rapidly that it almost seems that it's not even the same game that I was watching 10 years ago, let alone 20.
Yeah, so I obviously have a different take on this than y'all, but it's not that much different. So I will tell you that I do agree that this is a necessary rule. I think this is a good thing that's happening because if you really look at the NFL over the last 10 years, when they started really cracking down on concussions and they started doing things to try to drive down the number of concussions that their players were getting, that's when you started seeing the number of lower leg injuries increasing because the way that they being defenders, tried to adjust to that is, well, I can't hit them up high, so I got to hit them down low. And then you've been seeing an increase in the number of knee injuries and ankle injuries and lower leg injuries in general. So I think this is a perfect first step into fixing that problem. I think a bigger issue is, the conditions of the field, specifically turf, but that's a discussion for another day.
Yeah.
Where I have an issue with this, and it's not just what the players are saying, especially the defenders, it's the whole thing of interpretation. I want something like this that's like clearly defined as much as possible because we've seen it with all rules in the NFL. If you leave it up to the refs, if you leave it up to the NFL, you will get the right call maybe 30% of the time, and then the wrong call maybe 70% of the time. And then it's all up to interpretation on what is this considered a hip toss? Is this considered not? Is this going to be fined? Is this going to be not? And then you're just going to cause that confusion. Now let's get to the field side of things with the players. Yes, I do agree with the defensive players that this is going to be kind of an issue when it comes to how they play the game, but it's not just because of the rule itself. It's because of all the rules put together, because it seems like every other year you're getting, you can't do this, you can't do that. Can't hit them up high, can't hit them down low. Yes, you are going to have to aim for that target point, and those of us who have played football since high school, pee-wee, all that, at least we all learned how to tackle at a young age. There's also offensive and defensive linemen who complain about a lot of other things like high lows, crack blocks, all of that. that are illegal, but don't really get the recognition and cause as much as all this other stuff that has been coming along in the last 10 years. So I do side with the defensive players saying, like, listen, we need a way that we know specifically how we can bring down a defender in different situations. But the way I see this going this year is going to be a lot of interpretations, which means it's going to probably be like 70-30 on whether it's a good call or not. But you're probably going to see even more lazy defense this year, because now defenders are going to really be consciously thinking, if I tackle this, am I going to lose money? Am I going to be suspended? Am I going to cost my team 15 yards? And they're going to start making business decisions on the field when I really want a defender, the same way I want an offensive player, to rely on instinct in a game.
So yeah, I get it, man. And you know, the funny thing is that you think about your pursuit angles, right? Like we talk about pursuit angle and momentum. And sometimes your momentum will carry you into a swivel tackle. If you're approaching from the side or in a trailing, or like at a trailing angle, your angle of pursuit can possibly put you into a swivel tackle situation. And it really does. That is probably the part of this that I think is going to have the biggest problem. Is your trailing tackler who's trying to, you know, bring down a larger opponent, who's coming at them, you know, maybe a little faster. Their momentum is going to carry them around the waist of the opponent. That being said, I think that it's one of those things where you just have to figure it out. And the NFL is going to, like you said, they're going to protect their players. And as far as they're concerned, the primary point of protection is always going to be the offensive player, because they're in this mindset that offense gets viewership. Shootouts are more fun to watch than defensive games. And I can agree with that to a point. I think that a good football game has a nice balance to it. And I think that we're trying to find that balance offensively and defensively without hurting people. And that's the key here. And like I said, only 250 of these tackles were seen last year. And like Chris said, that was 65% more than the year before. So in 2 years, we saw less than 400 of these types of tackles, right? Like that is over a 2-year period where like 2 linebackers account for 200 tackles a year or more. You know, we saw the equivalent of like 3 players worth of tackles that resulted from this. I just don't see it being a big deal. I just would hate for this to be another situation where we see a game dictated on a call that had no business being made. But we're going to move on to the next rule here. And this one is one that I saw in the XFL. And it is the kickoff rule. And this rule was coming. The XFL was a testing ground, and realistically, this kickoff wasn't that big of a deal. I didn't see much different in rate of like return distance and things of that nature, and it actually created a situation where you were kind of more interested in the thing because there was no fair catch. You had to return the football. You didn't have a choice. It didn't matter if it was 9 yards in the end zone. It was a returnable football. So you had to pick it up. You had to run, right? You caught it. You had to run. So now you have kickers who are going to be working on trying to get that ball as deep in the end zone as possible to make them take it out because you can't fair catch it, right? And you can't just let it drop and hope it goes out of bounds, because if it drops and then kicks back into play, it's a live ball. So now you can't risk that unless it goes clean out of bounds. So you have to catch it. You have to return it. And I think it's going to bring the return game a little bit back. But the lineup's going to be weird. How it's going to happen is going to be weird. And I think the biggest question I had was, how are they going to do the onside kick? And what we learned was there is no surprise onside kick. You can't just line up and then your kicker rolls it 10 yards because nobody else is there and picks it up and now you guys have the ball. Nope, not going to happen. They answered that question. My next question is, what happens if you line up for an onside kick and pooch kick it over the top? Right? Because now you've returned to the standard kickoff line. People are running full sprint, full speed. Or is it once you say you're doing an onside kick, you have to do it? There is no blindsiding your team anymore. It is one or the other. And the way it sounds in the rule, it is one or the other. You can either say you're doing an onside kick and then you do an onside kick, or you're kicking the ball, and it's going to be that XFL lineup where, you know, they're down at the 40 and the 30, and the kicker has to get the ball past the 20, and in that 20 to the goal line, 20 to the, you know, the end zone out of bounds line, the returner has to return it. That is going to be interesting. But Chris, I don't know if you watched the XFL before they you know, discontinued due to COVID and restrictions and things like that, and obviously they're combined with another football league now. But what takes on this kickoff thing? I mean, I kind of enjoyed watching it in the XFL. It was unique. It was interesting. Yeah. And it actually created a pretty interesting sort of, football play here.
Let me tell you. So I just recently moved to Pittsburgh, but before I moved to Pittsburgh, I was living in Orlando. So Orlando actually had a team in the XFL that was like 5 minutes from my house. So I did actually get to go watch them play. Terrible team. But it was, to me anyway, it was entertaining, and it was something in between the season that allows you to still take in football, watch football, enjoy it. And I would personally say it was more entertaining because I feel like everybody that was playing was hungry. They want to win. They're playing for bonuses. They're playing for all types of things. So to me, it was fun to watch, even though the Orlando team was terrible. It was still fun to watch and be able to at least watch some type of football. So when we're talking about the kickoff return, I don't know if I'm the only person that feels this way, but if I am, so be it. I like it. I like the setup personally. The biggest thing that I feel like I like is something that you kind of already pointed out is like you have to catch the ball. Like you have to return it. If it doesn't go into the end zone, it doesn't go out of bounds, you have to return it, period. So there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And I do like that the other team cannot move basically until you catch the ball.
Or it hits the ground.
Right. Yeah, that too. Yeah, if you muff it, you're screwed. Yeah. But so the way that I view things, I do tend to be a little more on the positive side. Just a heads up, I do play devil's advocate. I like to be positive. That's just me, my personality. So the way I view it is, at least the setup that I saw, it seems like to me that there's really only one wave of people that you have to get through, right, in order to return the ball. From what I saw, and that and the kicker probably. So if you're someone like New England, I'm trying to remember his name right now.
Jalen Reagor,
yeah.
Real Patterson.
Correct. Right. So if you're Jalen Reagor and you're a little twitchy, right? You're fast and you're twitchy and you catch the ball and you can beat maybe one or two people or get in between, you're done. All you gotta do is beat the kicker. You're done. So I do feel like it's going to bring back kickoffs. I think it's going to make it more entertaining personally. I know I overheard some people say that they were trying to not just make it kind of a dead type thing where nobody's paying attention to it. So I look forward to it. I'm always personally, I enjoy changes. I like to see, they're trying to find ways to make things work. And I think that at bottom line, if you own a business, you know, that's kind of where it's at. You have to figure out what works both for the consumer and for yourself, and what's going to make the most sense and what's going to be the most successful all the way around. So in order to do that, though, you have to test things out. That's why I said it's only a year, right? So if you don't like it, oh well, you scrap it, you move on, you try something else. But that's the entire point. Like I said, when we talked a few minutes ago, like at the bottom line of it, it's a business. They have to figure out how to make things work, how to make it profitable, how to also keep their consumers happy, but also make sure that their business is still doing well. So you got to try different things. And the only way to do that is to implement things and see how it goes. So I'm okay with it. I don't mind it. I look forward to see exactly how it's going to pay off, if it's going to make a difference. But at bare minimum, it should be fairly entertaining.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's funny. You said that, people thought it was going to turn into a dead play. The kick return is a dead play. The minute that they said that a touchback comes out to the 25, they didn't care anymore. And you can fair catch it anywhere and it comes out to the 25 . Like they made it a dead play beforehand.
Yeah. Like where's the incentives?
Yeah. If you think this is going to be a dead play, you're out of your mind. This right here has actually made it a critical NFL or critical football play because you have to return the football.
Yep.
They're going to make you. Are you kidding me? Like this is legitimately bringing the kick return back to relevancy.
Yep.
Because it's really no different than a normal scrimmage play.
Yep.
Right? Like like you said, you beat one or two guys. You got a good blocking special teams unit.
Yep.
who can really just like, create some seams for you and get a lot of leverage. And you got a speedster back there who, like you said, he's got 1-2 good moves in him, and then his straight line speed.
Yep.
The kick return is suddenly one of those parts of the game where it's critical. You have to be planning for it. You have to be ready for it. And and the kicker himself, I mean, that puts a lot of pressure on your kicker to be able to tackle, to take proper pursuit angle. And so your training of special teams, what you look for in a place kicker, suddenly is completely different. Like Sebastian Janikowski, for everything he was not an overly agile guy, but he had a hell of a leg on him. But he was a larger guy. I'm not saying I could beat him in a foot race, but then again, I'm not an NFL player, so I didn't have to. But that's the kind of thing where you're talking about now, where your kicker also has to kind of be capable of laying a hit and taking good pursuit angles and doing these sorts of things. But Justin, I'll go to you on this one, man. I mean, where are you at on this line? We were a little bit off where we thought of on the tackle. We were a little closer after we got the definition, but I mean, this is one of the things where I feel like, change, and Chris, you said it best. Change is something that we as human beings are not overly comfortable with. No one is comfortable with change. We like things to stay the same. Why? Change is unfamiliar. Unfamiliar things are uncomfortable. And so when you have a league that has been status quo for the better part of almost a century, and now suddenly we are getting massive changes in a massive way. I mean, where are you at on this, Justin? I got to know.
Oh, no. All three of us are on the same page when it comes to this, because I think this is a great idea. I think this is something that was needed. I'm somebody who is not only in house call for the NFL side, but also on the WWE side. This whole last season reminded me of the Attitude Era, whenever the Divas had their matches and everybody just went back to the concession stand or to the bathroom, because nothing was going to happen. Nothing exciting was going to happen. I watched 17 Giants games and probably see maybe 2 kickoff returns the entire season. And honestly, this rule does a lot of good for the NFL. One, for the fans' perspective. Let's be honest. A kickoff return, specifically a kickoff return for a touchdown, is one of the most exciting plays in football. Everybody remembers Devin Hester returning a kickoff during the Super Bowl. Everybody remembers the return specialists like a Devin Hester, like a Cordell Patterson, like a Josh Cribbs. And those guys who may not have excelled on the offensive or defensive side of the ball, but if they got the ball in their hands on that special teams, you were not looking away from your TV for 1 second. And that's where I think the biggest benefit of this is. Like you said, Chris, the NFL is a business. And how do you keep this business going? You enhance more stars into it. So now you have a chance of getting more star level return specialists, those shiftier wide receiver cornerbacks that may be like later picks in the draft, may not see the field, but they're hella fast. It can actually like shake everybody. And then for the kickers, you know how much more money you're going to make as a kicker if you could find a way how to strategically and consistently kick that ball 5 to 9 yards in the end zone on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
Now you're just bringing everybody up in some way. Will it be tough on the kickers? Absolutely. But as a fan of it, this is something that we needed.
Absolutely. And I'm doing some number crunching right here real quick for you. So from 2021 to 2023, there were only 8 return touchdowns in the NFL. Kick return touchdowns. Right. In 2020, there were, let me count them real quick, 7 in 2020.
And I bet most of those
7 in 2019. 7 in 2019. No one in 2020 had more than 1. No one in 2019 had more than 1. In fact, the Nyheim Hines and I'm going to butcher this dude's name. In Nwangwu for Minnesota, they each had 2. And Nyheim Hines had 2 and had him for 2 different teams because he was with the Colts and went to the Bills and had another one. In 2019, they had 7. In 2018, they had 5. In 2017, they had another 7. In 2016, they had 7. 2015, they had 2. And it was both Cordell Patterson. And then 2014. So basically outside of 2020 or 2013, 2012, and 2015, They outdid 2021 through 2023 in one season. And what changed from there to there? How they the rules on how they did the kickoff, how they did the alignment, where they placed the ball, fair catches, all of those rules came into play in 2021. And you're saying that this is going to make it a dead play? Statistics would say you are wrong. It has been a dead play for the last 3 seasons.
Yep.
And I am okay with trying anything to change that. Now, one other thing that did change that I think is actually pretty interesting, and it makes sense since we added an extra game, a few years ago, that we would add a week to the free agent deadline, the trading deadline, right? The trade deadline is now moved from October 31st to November 5th. We are getting an extra week, and it's a hell of a birthday present for me because my birthday is November 4th. And I hope to God we get something at some point in time in New England because we sure as shit hadn't got anybody in free agency. So, I mean, I think it's status quo. I think that this makes sense. It made too much sense, and the only thing that didn't make sense is that it took them this long to make this much sense. I mean, I feel like this is one of those ones where it was like, why did you not think of this, and not let this happen? I mean, if you change the schedule. Other things that reflect the schedule must change. So you added a game. You should add a week to the free agent to the I keep calling free agency. Free agent's on my mind, people. I can't help it. I'm literally it's PTSD at this point. The trade deadline should have had an extra week, and I don't think any of us are going to disagree with that. So we're not going to spend too much time on this. Do you agree that this makes sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Like the only thing that didn't make sense was that it took it this long for them to realize it made sense, right? Like,
I mean, they're human, right? Like, when you get into something, sometimes it's easy to kind of like the easy stuff you don't really pay attention to because you're too busy trying to make bigger changes. So it would have been easy to kind of overlook, and it's probably not something they realized until like mid-season. They're like, oh, well, can't change it now, so we'll look at that next season.
Yeah, and then like next season rolls through, and everyone does their rule projections and everything like that, and then it goes, we're forgetting something.
Right. Absolutely.
Trade deadline comes up. Oh shit, we were supposed to move this a week.
Right.
Because there's so many other rules that they proposed that it's just those things.
Yeah, like they were so caught off guard with some of the weird shit. They were like, I can't even remember my train of thought right now.
Yeah, they're human. It happens. Yeah, so
it does. To error is human. I agree with that. But
true.
Justin, we're gonna talk about something real quick, buddy, with your Giants. And I think that you were in agreement with me that the Daniel Jones contract was terrible. It was a terrible contract that they should have never have offered that man.
Oh, nope. You and I disagreed on that one.
We did. And now look what is about to happen. Your Giants, who have the number 6 overall pick in this year's draft, the GM and the coaching staff have been greenlit by Mr. Mara himself to draft a quarterback.
Where do I even start with that? Okay. I'll get into Mara later on because I got some issues with how he does things. So I'm just going to leave that alone and focus on the task at hand. The reason you and I disagree on the Daniel Jones contract is because we agreed on one thing. He should not have gotten that contract. Now, the reason I agreed to the contract is because of the details and specifically the outs on the contract. Because the Daniel Jones contract was essentially a prenup between Daniel Jones and the New York Giants. That said, we will pay you this money to continue progressing the way you are. But in the chance that you are not, we can end this thing mutually. And I saw it from the very beginning. From that, I got into shouting matches with Giants fans who seem to think that, oh, if you pay somebody $160 million, they're getting it up front no matter what. This is not the NBA. This is not the MLB. Money is not guaranteed in the NFL. And that's why you need to read contracts. So I've gotten into it with Giants fans over that. I think what Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll are doing the last couple of years is the smartest moves to make. They are making the right moves. They are signing the right people. And I'm just have PTSD from Gettleman and fucking, I'll say Jerry Reese. Yeah, Jerry Reese, the GM before him. I got PTSD from those two. So I could actually see Shane actually making a good move here. But let me get into John Mara. Mr. Mara, I understand that you are one of the two owners of the New York Giants. But I need you to turn to your right, look at your partner, Steve Tisch, and do what he is doing and shut the hell up. Because the whole idea of I'm giving them the green light to draft a quarterback, no offense, as the owner of a team, you should not be having these conversations in public. Yes, you can have your opinion on how you want your team to be run, but that should be left behind closed doors. Why? Because there's two other owners in Woody Johnson and fucking Jerry Jones who like to get on these microphones and spew whatever they want to say, and their teams are trash. Their teams suck.
Coming from a biased Giants fan on the Cowboys, of course.
Listen, I don't discriminate. I said the same thing with the Jets, at least.
Well, I mean, they're your neighbors. You can talk about them. That's normal. Yeah. You see the dysfunction up close.
But here's the thing. Lately, the last couple of years, Mara has had this tendency to want to get rid of people early because they think you could just fix a team in 1 or 2 off seasons. Unfortunately, things have been so damaged with the Giants that this is a rebuild that is going to take years. Now, they are putting the proper pieces in place, but is essentially putting a bandage right now because we need to develop talent. And that means develop them from the draft. So this is something that needs patience. This is not something that you're going to be like, oh, Daboll, Shane, yeah, you're going to need my permission to sign this player, trade this player, cut this person, draft this person. Because at the end of the day, Mara, your job is to not build the team. You hired a GM for a reason. Your GM hired a head coach for a reason. Let them do their jobs. And if all fails and the Giants somehow are worse off this season than they were last season, then we can have this talk about you trying to make decisions. Because the decision is going to be to let them go. But until then, keep it in the boardroom.
You know what's funny is that, like, I remember talking to some people about, like, you know, just jobs in general, businesses in general, organizations. And you know what you don't fucking see in modern corporate America? The fucking CEO coming downstairs to the fucking help desk and sitting down, taking calls, trying to solve, you know, problems, following the 10, you know, troubleshooting steps. You want to know why? Because the CEO might own the company, but he doesn't know a fucking thing about what's going on at ground level. All right. He is a up level, you know, top management kind of guy. He gets a little bit of a peek into the overall total function of his organization. And I think what these NFL owners forget is that you might own a football team. That does not make you know football. Jerry Jones is probably the closest thing to what you can say an owner who knows football, and he hasn't won a Super Bowl in 30 years. Okay? In fact, I don't think he's won a playoff game in about the same amount of time. So, and when you think about it, Jimmy Johnson was his coach, and they fought consistently because Jerry Jones wouldn't stay the fuck out of the football operation. And at the end of that tenure, Jimmy Johnson looked like he had aged like 20 years overnight and was happy to leave because he had got his 3 championships and was done with Jerry Jones's bullshit. If you start to think about when owners start to get involved, when they get too big in their britches, shit tends to go south. When you start as an owner, start controlling, telling your guy you hired what he is and is not going to do with a draft pick, that's when shit goes sideways. So now that we've been greenlit to draft a quarterback, Chris, I'm going to go to you. Who should the Giants draft at quarterback? because they're green lit for it. So who in this draft, just to make Justin smile some more about his team's terrible, terrible direction, we're going to see who you think is the best fit in this draft for your New York Football Giants.
Oof. Well, I don't know if Justin's going to like me after this. So, yeah, we'll go back to like the green light, right? So, with that, personally, me, if I am the Giants, I am not drafting quarterback in the first round. I'm not doing it. So the reason I am not doing it is because they do have other needs right now. They have whether or not you like Daniel Jones or not, he's still under contract. You still have him this year. Okay, so you take that, you run with it. So my proposal would be for them to follow the Packers round, where you outside of drafting this person in the first round, go the Packers route, find somebody you can develop under Jones. So you find his replacement, you give his replacement time to sit, get to know the NFL, get to know whatever routes and stuff they're going to be running, whatever schemes they're going to be running, get to know the coaching staff, learn what to and what not to do from Jones. And then you give them a year, and then you go after this year and you see what you have. And you kind of go that route. So if we're going that route, for me personally, for the Giants, I think they should be looking at, if they're talking first round, I think they should be looking at a top wide receiver or top O-line, my personal opinion. Because I do feel like they haven't really invested in their offensive line very much, and that may be the reason why Daniel Jones struggles a little bit. So that would kind of be the route that I go. So if you're them, you're talking quarterbacks. Me personally, I don't know if y'all gonna like this or not, but I would go for someone in the realm of a Joe Milton. You draft him 6th, 7th round, so you're not drafting him very high. He's projected to go in the 7th, so you might even get him undrafted. Because he has a cannon, right? You want somebody that at least has the physical traits and then stuff that you can coach. Like not being able to read defenses, you have time to coach that. Being able to be comfortable post-snap, pre-snap, you have time to coach that. Doing intermediate routes, you have time to coach that. What you can't coach is size, mobility, arm strength. As we know, I am a Patriots fan, and that was an issue with Mac Jones. So arm strength cannot be taught. I don't care how much you work out, cannot be taught. So from that point, you have time to develop him. And if you trust your coaches, you get somebody who at least has the raw ability that you can redshirt, let him learn, and then eventually, if you feel like he has the potential to replace Jones after this year, then you do that. If not, I mean, you don't have a lot of options next year. I would say Shedeur Sanders is probably going to be the best option. Maybe a Carson Beck, if depending on how he does this year.
Brady
maybe
Brady Cook.
Yeah, there's a couple of options, right? So I feel like you probably go that route if you're the Giants. I wouldn't be so quick to now. Given Daniel Jones didn't really give himself any type of wiggle room this year. Even though he didn't play the entire year, I think he was at like 900 yards, 2 touchdowns, and like 6 interceptions before he went out.
Good.
Right. It wasn't looking great at all. And he's actually progressively degressed since he started. I think his best statistical year was his rookie year, as was Mac Jones. So I know how that goes. But I don't think you should be so quick if your ownership, just because you got the green light, to go and spend your first round on a quarterback, because you do have other needs. So why not just build up your roster and then address the quarterback when you need to? Right now is not that time to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And you think about it, I saw a statistic that came out the other day, and it was Daniel Jones comparably to Trevor Lawrence. And their career statistics, averages, are not far off from each other. Mm-hmm. They are very, very, very close to what each other are. Now, if you think about what the Jaguars have done for Trevor Lawrence and what the Giants have not done for Daniel Jones, and for their numbers to be that similar, I wouldn't write Daniel Jones off just yet. However, I love the Joe Milton pick, and here's why. Who did Brian Dabble absolutely bring along and turn into that was a physical specimen that had questions at accuracy but had a straight cannon for an arm?
Josh Allen.
Josh Allen, who was the number 1 rated quarterback without having another top 10 weapon on his team the entire season last year. Josh Allen. So if Brian Dabble is the reason Josh Allen was as good as he was, and if you have looked at Josh Allen since Brian Dabble's left, he has actually regressed since Brian Dabble's left.
Yep.
And you give him a year with Joe Milton, who is, I'd say, probably as big and probably a little bit faster than Josh Allen. And I would say he probably has a better arm strength than Josh Allen.
Yeah.
And you give him a year with you give him a year with Brian Dabble. I mean, that's not a bad pick. He's not high on my list of quarterbacks. I did think he was an intriguing prospect. However, I do think he's 1 to 2 years before he's capable of being a capable starter. I think that in a run-first offense that's got good offensive lines, doesn't ask too much of him, he could probably fast-track that to 1 year for sure. And I don't know if the Giants have that. But, I mean, I like the idea of taking a quarterback late. There's a lot of quarterbacks late that you could get that I think that I am very high on. I think, like, Spencer Rattler's been climbing boards. You get him in the second right now, I think is probably his projected round. But the guy I've been looking at a lot who's really going around like 230, 240, 250, played just down the road from New York. He played at Maryland. Talia Tagovailoa, although he is an undersized guy, I think he has better traits than his brother. I think he's the all-time Big Ten passing yards leader. He throws off platform very well. I mean, just go watch the East-West Shrine Bowl game. He absolutely dominated that game, tore everyone up, right? And then if that's not good enough for you, there is one play that tells you everything you need to know about Talia Tagovailoa. He was rolling to his right, threw an absolute dot, right, to his wide receiver. His wide receiver breaks 2 tackles, fumbles the football. 40 yards downfield. Who's there to pick it up and run out of bounds with the football? Talia Tagovailoa threw a football 40-plus yards, ran downfield, and recovered the fumble of his target who caught the ball. That tells you everything you need to know about the type of football player you're getting in Talia Tagovailoa. And if that's not good enough, he's got pretty good arm talent too. Right? He didn't have a single season where he threw under 67% completion percentage. Every single year he had over 3,000 yards. The only reason he's as low as he is because he was a late entry into the draft process. And he played at Maryland, which had no weapons and one of the worst offensive lines in football.
Yeah.
So, like, there is not another Maryland player, I think, that's being drafted in the first 6 rounds. I think there's one offensive lineman that's going somewhere in, like, the 7th. And then there's Talia. Okay? But, Justin, hey, this is your team, bud. Who would you like to see in this draft class the Giants take since they've been greenlit for a quarterback, man?
Okay, so I agree on the first round. You saw my cheery face. It's not going to be a quarterback. I believe so many things are going to happen during draft night. I got to pay attention to Minnesota, see if they trade up. I got to see about New England, if they're going to pull some bullshit and trade back and do a bunch of other stuff.
Easy.
So I'm paying attention, and apparently there's rumors going around that people are projecting the first 4 picks to be quarterbacks, which tells you how many teams really need a quarterback right now. And I'm low-key praying that happens. Because if that happens and the Chargers do something dumb, then there's a chance that Marvin Harrison Jr. becomes a Giant. And I would pray for that to happen and for that to come through. But if it does not, I will gladly take a Malik Neighbors or a Roma Dunze. I am heavy on the idea of getting a number 1 wide receiver, something that we have not had since Hakeem Nicks. Like a true number 1 receiver.
I mean, you go a little further back to like Plaxico Burress and who was the guy always salted? Victor Cruz was not necessarily a number 1, but he was like a high slot receiver. Yeah.
But if we're talking quarterbacks, now I like the quarterbacks y'all chose for the later round picks. I really do. But that has to come with some kind of guarantee from ownership that you're not gonna can the head coach after the first year. Because like I said, Milton, which is, if I'm going between Milton and Talia Tagovailoa, I like the upside that comes with Milton a little bit more, and I do like somebody with a cannon of an arm. But he is a 1 to 2 year project. He needs to grow and develop in the NFL level. I don't want to draft him, even if it's a late round pick, for John Maramis that I gave you the green light to do it, to just can you right after, and then we're getting a new coach.
No,
This ain't my quarterback. This ain't my quarterback. And now I'm back to just square one with this team. So if I'm getting what I want a wide receiver number one. I feel like we invested enough on our offensive line right now to not have to sacrifice a high round pick. Maybe use the second round pick if you're not going to trade that away for somebody. And then a later round pick, go for one of these quarterbacks, not name Penix, only because the issue with him is that he's left-handed, and I don't trust Evan Neal to watch his blind side whatsoever. So that's how I want it. Wide receiver, maybe offensive lineman round 2, grab a quarterback, either round 2 or later.
I mean, it's not a bad plan. It's not a bad plan. And I just think it's funny that, like, and it seems to happen so often, especially with how quarterbacks contracts are just exploding right now with the, how the salary cap keeps rising and rising and rising, and how these quarterback contracts just keep going up and up and up, and how teams just keep moving more and more money into the future that they'll never, ever see. It is absolutely incredible that you would sign a quarterback, 2 years ago to a $160 million contract, and now we're talking about drafting his replacement as if he's not still on the roster and didn't just sign that. Like, it is wild for me. And especially, like you said, an owner should never divulge a draft strategy. You should never divulge internal operations, let alone dictate internal operations, because you've hired someone who you believe has more information and more knowledge than you to do that job. And it's kind of funny that I think that I would never be a good GM, not because I don't think I can evaluate talent or I can't draft people or do things. I would tell the owner to go fuck himself if he came down there and tried to tell me how to do my job. And the funny thing is that people are like, oh, you wouldn't do that. I am going to come out and tell you right now that I 110% told people that were significantly higher ranked than me in the military that they could go take a long walk off a short pier because they were being dumb and it was stupid. And I literally asked them, oh, you know how to do it? Why don't you do it then? Sit down, do it.
But there is a small chance that all of this going on is a smokescreen, because I do remember 2 years ago, everybody was reporting that the Giants weren't interested in a certain high-level talent for the first round of the draft when they had pick number 5 and pick number 7, and how this person is not interested in football. He doesn't have the personality that New York looks for. And with the 5th overall pick, the Giants selected Kayvon Thibodeau out of the University of Oregon and threw everybody and their mama for a loop. So I don't question Joe Schoen for making smoke screens and showing hey, we're going to do one thing and then do something completely different.
True.
I mean, we're that time of year. So It makes sense. Everybody's kind of jockeying for position at this point.
Yeah. Who's going to bite first, right? So while we're talking about this time of year, while we're talking about the draft, I'm going to go ahead and start this. I'm going to kick this off. Draft day trades that we want to see or we think are going to happen. I'm going to start off. I'm going to take the easy one. The Vikings will move into the top 5 for a quarterback that they think they need to get. And here's why I think this is why the Giants smokescreen thing makes sense. Right? Let's say they're pretty sure that the Cardinals are trading away 4. And they think that the Vikings can get a better deal than what the Cardinals or for 5 than what they give her for. And the Chargers are looking to get some influx of talent. And we already know that John Harbaugh, where he goes, he's successful. So it's not beneath him deal. So let's say the Cardinals trade away their 4th overall pick to some random insert team here. The top 4 picks are quarterback. And then the Vikings move up to 5 and make it 5 straight quarterbacks. And the Giants at 6 get to flip a coin for who they want at wide receiver. It is not outside the realm of possibility. There has been rumors. There are multiple teams who are looking for quarterbacks. And we already know the Rams have no problem moving up to get their guy that they believe can be the future. And they're running out of Matthew Stafford years. Right? And if they think that there's a chance, Because everything that's been pointing to the fact that Michael Penix' health cleared, the fact that he threw well at his pro day, he threw well at the combine, he threw well at the Reese Senior Bowl, his medical cleared. Everything about Michael Penix has now driven him well into the first round, where before he was going in the second because his health was a concern and we weren't sure how long his knees would hold up. And then you have all the JJ McCarthy hype where he's been rumored to go as high as 2 and no later than 10. Right?
Crazy.
And then you have Bo Nix, who's an anomaly, who no one knows where he's going because it depends on how you value him, how you look at him. Jaden Daniels is all over the board. No one knows where he's going. He started off as a top 5 prospect on PFF's big board. He's down in the 20s. No one knows where he's going, right? There is a way where we could see a similar play out to what we saw in 2020, right? Where like you had, 5 quarterbacks go in the first 15 picks. That's not outside the realm of possibility here. And especially with how everyone's talking about this quarterback class, which I'm not buying the hype as much as a lot of other people are. I've been down that road. I am not buying, you're not going to spoon feed me the same bullshit year in, year out when you have a bunch of prospects that can do a bunch of shit and blah, 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 blah. No, thank you. There is a way where the first 5 picks are quarterback. And if you don't think so, you're not paying attention. Because everyone will sit here and tell you, on every fan who thinks they're an armchair GM, and I'm guilty of doing it too, will tell you that if you're looking for your team to rebuild and they need to jumpstart the rebuild, they need to get their guy under center. You need your quarterback. And you're telling me you're not going to take the chance to make sure you get your guy? If all of them have a shot of going, if 5 or 6 of them have a shot of going in the top 15, which is what it's rumored to look like. I mean, hell, there's mocks right now that have Spencer Rattler going in between 28 and 34.
Oh, wow.
Right? And the only reason I say 28 through 34 is because there are teams that are willing to take him and just to get a 5th-year option on his ass. Trading back into the first round or drafting him in the first round just so they can get a 5th-year option on because they believe he's got day 1 starter traits. And those are teams that are playing that far back that can afford to sit him for a year to make sure he's got day 1 starter traits. Right? That's a former Heisman candidate that's going to go back in that range. So you're looking at it right now. There is a possibility with the capital that some of these teams are eating up to gear for a move that allows them to get their guy. And they're all going to be jockeying for the guy they believe is their guy. Whether it's JJ McCarthy, which I don't believe in, Bo Nix, which I don't believe in, Michael Penix, who, I'm still kind of weary, every day if my team drafts him, I'm going to church and praying that his knees last 15 years. Now, I'm not a church going person, but I will pray to every single thing that there is, praying that his knees last to get their guy. So that's my trade. The Minnesota Vikings trade up, another team trades up, and 5 quarterbacks are taken in the first 5 picks, and the Giants have their pick at wide receiver. So Chris, I'm going to go to you on this one. What is the one draft day trade you want to see? I didn't go with the Patriots because obviously I've been pounding my fist on that desk for fucking ever. I mean, they need to get mass draft picks, but I'm going to go with you on this one, Chris. What is one draft day trade you want to see, and what is one you think or is going to happen? Either or.
So I'm glad you brought up the Patriots. I feel like I'm like the only Patriots fan that's just patient. You're like, we'll see how it goes. So when I'm looking at draft day trades, right? So I've mocked this several times. I want to say almost every day for like the last month and a half. And every day it seems to play out the same. So I'm just going to go. This is on the NFL draft, so I don't think it's always as realistic as it likes to make itself seem. But I'm going to go with it anyway. So the trade I would like to see, and I don't know if it's going to happen, but I do feel like if it does, it is definitely a win-win situation, in my opinion. Justin, you're not going to like this at all. So I have the Patriots trading the number 3 pick to the Los Angeles Chargers for the number 5 pick, also for their number 3 pick, which I believe is 69? And then also for their one of their 4th round picks in 105. So with that, the Patriots are doing two things. You're staying in the top 5, so you still have that ability as long as no team jumps you and talks with Arizona. You still have the ability to get your quarterback. You are adding picks, which Gerard Mayo has already gone on record saying that the critical part is having multiple picks. So you're getting both of those, and the LA Chargers get their guy in Marvin Harrison. So with that being said, what the Patriots would then do at number 5 is you take Drake May or Jaden Daniels, whichever one is there, I'm okay with. And then you pick your offensive tackle in the second round, or you pick your wide receiver in your second round, either or, because then you have back-to-back picks in the third and back-to-back picks in the fourth, which you can either go wide receiver, running back, tight end, whatever. But I do feel like the way that this offseason has played out, I know a lot of people are disappointed. Me, for one, I am not. I think they are building it the right way, so I'm okay with it. I feel like they have spent majority of their offseason doing the things that had to be done and reinforcing their defense. They did the things that they needed to do. They re-signed the people they wanted to sign, good character guys, whatever. Then you have your defense. So I do feel like in the draft, what they're going to do is primarily focus on the offense. And I do feel like that's where Elliott Wolf was going when he said he wanted to weaponize the offense. I believe that 100%. He never said it was going to be through free agency. Never said that. I highly believe if he's a big draft and develop type of guy, that his weaponize was coming from the draft. And everybody has said it. This wide receiver class right now is stacked. Second round, third round, maybe going into the fourth round. You have a lot of options. So if you can double dip with wide receivers and still get your quarterback, still get a premier blue chip offensive tackle, you added extra picks, you have 2 additional picks, one in the third, one in the fourth, and then you still have the 5th, 6th, and so on and so forth. So I feel like that would be a great win-win for them. The Chargers revamp their offense, get a big weapon, and then we add picks as well and still get your quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I've been doing that. That's a great trade. I am 100% on board with the wide receiver talent in this draft. I have put out multiple things saying that, there are 1,000-yard guys in this draft who are going to go in the 5th or 6th round. 110%. Joshua Cephas is a 1,200-yard receiver out of UTSA, and he's had multiple 1,000-yard seasons, and he is literally projected to go early 6th, late 5th round right now. Okay. Like, that's insane. Javon Baker's a 1,200-yard guy. He's projected to go somewhere in the 3rd or 4th round. Like Malik Washington has had this, I think, the 2nd or 3rd most yards in this draft class. He is the 2nd highest rated wide receiver in this draft class, and he's going to go somewhere around 129. Yeah. So, and that tells you everything you know about this draft class. All right. So I'm on board with that. I think it's a good trade. Justin, you're on the clock. You have one trade to make in this draft, the one you want or the one you think is going to happen the most. Which one is it going to be?
It's going to be one I want and one that I can see happening. So let me set the stage for you. First pick of the overall draft, Caleb Williams goes to the Chicago Bears. The 2nd overall pick, the Washington Commanders shocks the world and picks Jaden Daniels and gives Cliff Kingsbury the quarterback that he really wants. Another Kyler Murray. And then the Patriots are on the clock. And the phone rings. And Elliott Wolf picks it up. And it is Joe Schoen of the New York Giants. And he tells him, y'all want to rebuild your team. And there's a certain player we want. And we will give you the 6th overall pick, the 47th, and probably also a future pick in next year's draft. And if that does get accepted, the Giants are on the clock at number 3. And who do they end up getting? Because then they know for sure it's a quarterback.
Probably
it's Joel. A green light.
Probably Joel.
Nope. Drake May. Which every New York Giants channel, every single New York Giants reporter have always said this whole offseason, if the Giants end up trading up, it's for Drake May. If not, they will stay put. So if there's anything that I can see happening is Joe Schoen getting on the phone. And if somehow Drake May makes it past the first 2 picks, he will be trying to get a trade done.
I mean, I'm looking at it right now. According to PFF, what is considered to be or acceptable value for that trade is 647 and a 2025 second round pick. Has a according to PFF, that is a 93% chance of acceptance right there. But that being said, next year's draft is barren. This year's draft is loaded. They may have to send more capital in this year's draft than just 6 and 47 to get that done. But it's not a bad trade. It's not a bad trade. I think that, you know, if you're looking for a key piece, that's the way to go about it. I think that, you know, we have a lot of us have been saying this throughout a lot of, you know, different platforms, you know, especially here at the House Call. This draft, now that Justin Fields is out of Chicago, we know for a fact this draft starts at 3. Because the only team that we don't know for sure what they're going to do is the New England Patriots. That's the first team on the board that'll be on the clock where we realistically have no idea what the card's going to say, or if they even turn one in at 3. We have no clue. So if you miss the first 2 picks of the draft, don't worry. You didn't miss anything. You can go look at any mock. We already know what it's going to be. We know it's quarterback. The only difference is what name's on Washington's card.
Yep.
After that, it's going to get real spicy because people are going to be flying up and down the draft board for sure within the top 5 picks. At least one team, if not 2, will fly up and down the draft board in the top 5. Mark my words, it'll happen. But that's all we have time for today. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe on all of our platforms. We are on all social medias. We are on Spotify as well for our podcast. If you are going on the road, take us with you. You can listen to us full form content on Spotify at the House Call Podcast there. Also, big shout out to all of our affiliates. We'll put the link to our website in the description of this video. You can check out our affiliate link there. It'll take you to our link tree showing all of our affiliates as well. And a big thank you to Dubby for sponsoring this video. They are one of our sponsors. Once again, go to dubby.gg. Use our code to get 10% off your first order on your non-jittery Better You caffeine supplement and hydration products. They also have shaker bottles, clothing, and gym bags. All the things you need to rep your Dubby merch and drink choice. Until next time, this has been The Gridiron.